Okay, season 2, here we come.
The Kardashians are back on Hulu.
We're back, in case you missed us.
This September.
We are starting to talk wedding dresses.
Everything gets elevated.
I do believe in love. When you love, you know you're alive. You have these feelings.
No matter how crazy things are, we're always going to be family.
Now hold your crown up. The Kardashians Season 2, now streaming only on Hulu.
Your plans? Today it's dinner with the parents at your spot.
We gotta come back here.
Now their spot. Or you're on the edge of your seat at the game.
Come on, just one time.
And it's the one. Or maybe you're catching the next flight to...
Now boarding flight 1850.
Oh, that's you. The choice is yours. And when you're with Amex, it's not if it's going to happen, but when. American Express. Don't live life without it.
Welcome to another Britflicks.com podcast. My name's Stuart Wright, and today's guest is BREA GRANT. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure indeed. We're going to talk about your film Torn Hearts that you directed. But before we do talk about that, you were just recently at Fright Fest in London's Leicester Square for another film called Night Sky, directed by your friend Jacob Gentry. And when I spoke to you on the media wall for Fright Fest TV, when I had a different hat on, you mentioned about that you were trying to imagine what your face might look like on an IMAX.
Yeah.
So BREA, what does it look like when you see your own face on an IMAX?
You know, I mean, look, I've been an actor for many years now. I was an actor. It was my main job, for better or for worse, for many years. And I've seen my face all sizes. You know, I think, look, we're all judgmental about our looks. I think that one was kind of fun because we shot it a few years ago, and it was kind of fun because I feel like I can tell that I look younger, and there's parts of me that I'm like, oh wow, that's like a younger version of me. But it was, you know what, it was lovely. It was nice. It was very exciting seeing that movie. I think Jacob put a lot of heart into that movie, and there's a lot of him. He worked really hard on that one, and it was fun to see with an audience. The Fright Fest audience was really lovely. It was cool seeing it that big, and like especially a movie like that we shot, you know, in Utah, New Mexico, like all these very distinct places, really cool places. And we actually physically went there and shot in the American Southwest, and getting to see it on that giant screen was just, that's the way it should be seen.
Now, the main reason for getting you on, though, is to talk about the film you directed, Torn Hearts.
Yes.
Which is now available on all HD platforms in the UK, as I understand it.
You tell me, but I think that's right.
It said, I read it was since the 5th of September 2022. It's been available via Paramount Pictures.
That sounds right.
And I checked on Just Watch, and it told me I could get it on all the platforms.
Great. All right, people, go get it. It's available now.
So we know they can watch it. But so to make them watch it, do you want to give us a brief synopsis to what Torn Hearts is about from your point of view? Yeah.
It's about two young, up-and-coming country musicians who really want to make it big, and they decide to go to the house of their this woman that they really admire, this country, old school country star, to ask her to do a song with them. And horror ensues.
Indeed, it does. Indeed, it does. In my review, I likened it to, or christened it, a Nashville Noir. It was I
love that. I actually saw that. I appreciate it. I think that's right, because it's, you know, it's a noir. It's like these women are probably, things are not going to go well for them.
Yeah.
You can tell that at the beginning, which is, you know, I think very important to noir. And it also like has the pace, I think, of a noir. I appreciate that. And I may be the first in that category. I'm
think
not
so.
Sure, though.
And it's because they're all flawed people. None of them are actually good, but they're not bad, not cold-hearted, but they've been, you know, as show business does to people, it makes you desperate and it makes you cynical, which is
100%. there's a part where one of the characters says, I'm not a bad person. And then the other character says, well, you're not that good either. and I think that those are the characters I'm always drawn to, like when it comes to, because all of us are flawed, and it's interesting to see people's flaws. And especially, I think we've had, especially in genre and in horror, we've had so many final girls who are not that flawed, and people are flawed, women are flawed. And I want to see those things on the screen, but still be willing to watch and cheer for them. That was, so I did a movie a few years back called 12-Hour Shift. And that was the other goal, the same in that one, where I wanted to have this sort of flawed main character and really try to see the world from her perspective. And that was my goal from the beginning with Torn Hearts, was I didn't want to judge these women. I just wanted them to make the decisions they would make based on who they were and the way they've been treated by this, screwed up industry so far in their lives.
Rachel Collar-Croft wrote the script. So when you first read it, what was the thing that stood out for you that made it something for you to want to direct it? What was the I'm just thinking of like for that screenwriter listening in now, when you're reading the script, when did you go, hold on a minute, this is the one for me? What got you?
Well, I mean, I think like a lot of filmmakers, I read a lot of scripts. I mean, I definitely read, I read 3 to 4, if not more, every week. So this script was interesting to me because, one, Blumhouse was already on board, so that's helpful. But 2, it was something I hadn't seen before, and that felt really interesting to me. Like she had a friend that was in the Nashville country music industry. And so she kind of took that experience and put it into a horror movie. And I just had never seen something like that. Like, I think we see a lot of like rock and roll and stuff like that in horror movies, but we don't really see country music. And that just felt like an interesting jumping off place. And then I felt like all 3 characters had a very specific point of view that I related to in some way. You have the woman who's been around forever, who has been, hurt by this industry, is angry, wants to pit everyone against each other and kind of hurt people the way she has been hurt. And then you have these other 2 up and coming people who still have stars in their eyes and are hoping if they can just do this one thing, they can make it. And I kind of saw myself at this point in my career in both of those women. So I think like, as far as, writers just looking to write stuff that directors are going to want to attach to, for me, it always comes from a character point of view. So these characters were well developed. They were interesting. They had these flaws. They had characteristics. It wasn't just some character that I didn't care about. And then also put him in this space that I had never seen before. Like, it was hard to say no to something that was so unique and interesting.
Now obviously Torn Hearts is the name of the film, but also the name of the duo that is our main 2 protagonists. And the antagonist, Katey Sagal, plays Harper Dutch of the Duchess Sisters, a 90s phenomena, which is obviously Heroes of Torn Hearts. Katey Sagal's character is I was thinking about, like, when I've watched things like Justified and I watch people drinking bourbon, and it always looks like really, really tasty and really refreshing. But like Harper's sort of is more like Marion in Raiders of the Lost Ark. I think them 2 having a drinking competition would be brutal. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I think it's pretty public that Katey is sober. But it was something I think she really related to about the character, was this woman starts the day with alcohol, and she finishes the day with alcohol. 2 or 3 fingers of alcohol, not just. And
it doesn't affect her, like at this point, because she's been living alone and living like this for a really a long time. And self-medicating in the way that many alcoholics do. And
it's also interesting because I used to manage in a previous life. I did manage a rock band, and so having sort of seen when you go through the bad experience, which clearly she'd had the good, but obviously bad had led her to where she is right now, is that almost like when you're ready for the music industry isn't interested in you anymore. They want you when you're a happy puppy, you'll do anything that they'll tell you. Whereas once you understand the rules of the game, that's when they don't want to listen to you. And I think she portrays that brilliantly.
Same with the film industry. The moment they figure out that you figure out what to do, and the moment you figure out that you should start saying no is the moment that I think that they're as far as actors go, I think they're less interested in you. And I think that's something Katey related to, is being, raked over the coals by an industry that is not kind to women. And she's been doing this a long time. She's been an actor for a long time. And I think she related to that. But also, if people are listening and they're trying to get actors to be cool actors like Katey, like what a blessing to be in a movie like this. She had never done a horror movie. Nope. So like this was a whole new thing for her. And the idea of doing that was really interesting to her. And especially a character like this, who's just so juicy, like just getting to play within this world was really exciting for her.
Yeah, because she's more or less like Cruella, really, isn't she? But but to country singers.
I kept saying Misery. That was my go-to. Like that she's controlling things. Like she's the one pulling all the strings behind the scenes, but also slowly, obviously not stable. Obviously losing her mind over the course of the movie. Which for an actor is the most is fun to dive into. Like if you, especially someone like Katey, who's honestly just she's been working a long time. She's very level-headed. She's very cool. So like getting to play with this dark side, I think is something she can really get into.
Now it's about singing, and a really important part of it is that we get to see musical performances in this. And as part of Katey's long career, she was a backing singer with Gene Simmons.
She for a couple different people. Yeah, she was I can't remember where she got her start, but yeah. So she has been doing it a long time. And we prepped this movie. I had about 3 weeks to prep this movie, 3.5 weeks. So it wasn't very long. And so, day one, I was talking to the casting director and my producer, John, and we were like, okay, I personally really wanted singers to be in every role because I just knew there's a scene towards the end I really wanted to record live if it was possible because it's all of the women singing together.
Yeah.
And then also I just knew it was going to save me. As a former actress, I feel like I know I used to lie on my resume all the time and be like, sure, I can horseback ride or whatever. And I don't want someone to lie to me and say they can sing and then not actually be able to sing. So that way, if I want to do it live or use their real voices, I was able to do that. And Katey came up because she is obviously a great singer. She's put out multiple albums. And I was like, wow, that's the dream person. If she would come to it, that would be my dream. And fortunately for me,
Is that easier? Is that from a film production point of view? Is it easier to get a performance in camera than just get them to mime to something and put it on after?
Yeah, well, it depends on what you're doing. If you just are playing a backing track and like you're just going to record it all in the studio, then I don't know if it makes a huge difference. It's nice to have someone who knows how to perform. Yeah. For example, so Abby, who played Jordan, she really does play guitar and sing, and that is Alexxis's voice singing. She's an amazing singer. So both of them could also sing, but having her be able to play guitar, that was easier because then you're not faking and cutting in and out and trying to be like, oh no, like so my husband is a music producer and I had him watch it because I was like, please tell me if anything looks bad, if anything looks fake. Because, you never know. And he was very impressed. And
I remember Michael Winterbottom, who did the 24-Hour Party People about Factory Records, John Sims, who plays Bernard Sumner. He's in a band outside of acting. Sam Riley, who played in Anthony Corbin's version of Joy Division. He was in a band before he was acting. So you can tell a mile off, I think, sometimes that someone's been on stage.
Some actors can totally fake it, and that's great too. But I, for me, and the amount of time we had to shoot this movie in, it was just going to be easier if we could do it, and it meant I could work with cool, actors who could sing. For me at this point, I always just want to work with people I've already worked with, but none of the actors I had worked with in the past, I felt like could sing in the way. So I ended up with meeting these cool new actresses. I hope Abby puts out an album at some point because the Abby who played guitar and sings backup from the movie, she's such a brilliant singer and plays guitar so beautifully. And it made him so much easier. And then there's this scene at the end where they're all singing around the same microphone. That's the sound we used the sound from the day. I did not record any of that in the studio. We had a day booked where they're like, Katey needs to come to the studio that day. And I was like, why? We actually have it all done live on that day. It was a very difficult day to shoot because, she had to have like a thing in her ear, keeping pace and whatever. But it was just really fun to shoot it. And my sound guy and I, that day we were both so like giddy. Like,
it lends the film so much authenticity as well, doesn't it? Because it's the moment.
I think so. And it's something I always try to, I feel like I go towards big things that are sort of otherworldly and not necessarily realistic. And so having these moments that feel very realistic, I think grounds the movie.
Now, a movie reference that stood out for me was Sunset Boulevard, but more so the documentary about Grey Gardens in terms of the world that Harper Dutch has let herself live in. So do you want to talk about the influence of Grey Gardens on Torn Hearts?
Yeah. It's been a long time since I've seen Grey Gardens, but it was one of those, you sit down with your production designer and we have to get this house together within 3 weeks. And I had to find the house. So first I found a house completely empty. The house was originally empty, had white walls. And we talked a lot about color and then just what she would have there. And so it's this mix of that very Sunset Boulevard pictures of her, paintings of herself, those things of like that stars end up with. Like, I have stuff. I have all these pictures of myself as an actress where I'm like, I don't want these in my house. Like, I don't want a photo of me on like a red carpet framed in it's so weird, but you end up with them. And so all these things, these nods to her awards, gold records, actually have one of her gold records here. So we thought about all that stuff, but then also the stuff that would show that there are cracks, right? Things are not working out for her. All of the knickknacks, the bugs, the grossness, the things that would end up in her house. And one thing I kept referring to was that that at some point they go through the looking glass. It's an Alice in Wonderland moment when they walk through this gate because they've entered a different world and Harper is in charge of this world. Everything in this house reflects Harper, down to the coloring. There's a lot of pink in the movie, and that was Harper's color. There's literally pink in almost every frame if you look for it, because a lot of the knickknacks and stuff are pink. And
okay, season 2, here we come.
The Kardashians are back on Hulu.
We're back, in case you missed us.
This September,
We are starting to talk wedding dresses.
everything gets elevated.
I do believe in love. When you love, you're alive. You have these feelings.
No matter how crazy things are, we're always going to be family.
Now hold your crown up. The Kardashians Season 2, now streaming only on Hulu.
Your plans? Today it's dinner with the parents at your spot.
We gotta come back here.
Now their spot. Or you're on the edge of your seat at the game.
Come on, just one time.
And it's the one. Or maybe you're catching the next flight to...
Now boarding flight 1850.
Oh, that's you. The choice is yours. And when you're with Amex, it's not if it's going to happen, but when. American Express. Don't live life without it.
I wanted it to be that as you got deeper and deeper into her house, things got weirder and weirder. So the first room, you're like, okay, it's just a bunch of memorabilia. It's like kind of cool stuff. But then once you get to the kitchen, you're like, okay, well, now things are kind of gross. There's rotten eggs. There's a lot of trash everywhere. And then by the time you get into this, the heart of the movie, which is this spoiler, secret room in the house, then you realize how weird things actually are there.
As an actor who's become a director, how do you think your acting has informed you as a director?
It definitely affects the scripts and things I choose to do because I'm always reading just from a character point of view. And if the character doesn't have an arc, I'm sort of like, well, why would I don't need to be involved in this. And I think it, I think it affects the way I am on a set. My manager at some point was like, "You're great. You're so good at casting." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm good with actors." Like, I actually think I'm fine at casting. I think I can, choose good. I think I can choose good people and convince good people to be in things that I'm doing. But I think at the end of the day, it's that I give actors a lot of rope. Like I want to talk about character. I want to go through I want to learn their process and then let them do what they do. I don't want them to be stuck to the script. I don't want them to be stuck to the things that I figured out ahead of time. We spend a lot of time improvising on my sets, if at all possible. Obviously, in television, it's not as it's a bit frowned upon. Yeah. But on my sets, I like to get everything I want, and then at the end say to them, "Okay, actor take. You can say the lines however you want. You can do whatever you want. Tell me what you're feeling in this moment. Like, go for it." And I get a lot of really juicy, cool stuff out of that. So my whole thing is I want to give the actors agency. They're here to play. As long as we have a good time, as long as they're doing what they think they want to be doing, you end up getting the best stuff. I think what happens a lot of times is actors get stifled because directors have this very specific vision and the actors feel like they can't quite achieve it. And that's, we kind of do the opposite on my sets.
I mean, it's pretty clear from the start that Jordan and Lee are very different characters, but that becomes clearer the longer we get into the film.
Yes.
And in terms of Abby and Alexxis's performance, then was there any moments you can remember where they did something that was so the character that you hadn't anticipated would be something the character would do, and you were like, that
is such a good question. So I was familiar with Alexxis. She's in this movie called The Half of It that is not a genre movie, but it's such a brilliant little rom-com. And I had only known her from that, where she plays this she plays like a dream girl for people. So the casting, so it felt really obvious to me to cast her as this role where she also plays like a star. So it was fun. Anytime Alexxis would go dark and do something kind of dark, I would always be like, Alexxis, this is your casting. Your casting. People should be casting you more as like, you have a darkness to you that you can pull out, because she gets cast as like the beautiful girl next door. But I think she has way more. I mean, first of all, I think dark characters are more interesting. So I think she has more depth than that. I think there's something really interesting about that to me. And then Abby would always do something funny. Abby has a sense of humor to her acting, even though she's only really done everything I'd seen her do was pretty serious. But Abby, who plays Jordan, she would have these little funny moments, and a lot of them ended up in the movie, and they were not necessarily in the script. Like where she would have a look or go or say like an improv, or there's this part of the table where Harper says to Lee something like, "Yeah, I can tell that you're a real star," and then Abby improv something like, "Well, people say we both are good," something like that, and it's just like such a funny moment, and she was really good at coming up with little things that made the character so much deeper. So, I mean, both just amazing actresses that just had a lot of fun with these roles.
Yeah, because I remember what stood out, a couple of a sort of back and forth line that stood out was where Abby says, "Thank you very much for letting us come in your house," and Alexxis just says, "You look fantastic."
Yeah, that was actually scripted. It was scripted, but I thought it's such a brilliant little moment to show the way these two different women are going to deal with.
And then we get the stern look on Harper's face where she's working these two out, going, "Hold on a minute, these are not together."
Yeah, she's figured them out. I think she figures them out moment one. She starts to see who they are and quickly realizes how she can pit them against each other, which I think you can just totally see it in Katey the whole time. It's kind of amazing.
Now, this is just given what you just said there. It's like this will sound like a really crass example, but I failed to interview, I should say, Marky Smith from the post-punk band The Fall. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but he is synonymously the most cantankerous. I mean, sadly, he's passed away now. And I turned up to interview him unprepared because I'd been sent late. I'd been sent as a kind of with some questions. And he saw through it within about 30 seconds. Like, he knew I knew nothing. And it was amazing because he, in the same way that Harp had been there, done that, and she can see the mistakes that she'd made in the two women. It was like,
well, yeah, and it's it's kind of a scary thing, but I do think, especially in these industries where you're constantly thrown into new situations, you get very good at sizing people up, very good at going, is like figuring out people's, are they nervous? Are they weak? What is happening? And because I know it's something I do the moment. I mean, every time I've been on so many sets, right? And every time you walk onto a new set, you have to figure out where you stand in this pecking order. You have to figure out who are your allies, and you have to figure out who doesn't know what the fuck they're doing. And so it's like this, like you have to kind of figure these things out very quickly. So I think as actors, you get really good at assessing your situations and seeing through people very quickly.
Now, the fourth wheel on this vehicle that is Torn Hearts is Joshua Leonard's fantastic performance as. And as a former rock manager, I can honestly say I wasn't very similar to him, but I did appreciate his portrayal of what was once my craft.
I like that. Great. He's a fun guy. I love his work.
I mean, what was the conversations like? Because obviously he is sort of turned up to 11, isn't he, in terms of who he is as a character?
Well, he's one of those guys who, I mean, he's also a writer. He's also a director. Like he's been doing this for a long time. Like a lot of people, I think, know him from Blair Witch Project. I mean, that was, he got his start doing that, but now he does all of it. And I mean, the conversation I had with him was that I wanted him to be likable. I wanted people to know why Lee's character was with him. I didn't want him to just be a jerk right out of the gate, right? But he's a guy who loves to improvise. So there is a take in there where he's like explaining to Harper how he's going to get them popular. And we did it a few times. And I was like, I don't know, do one on like coked up, like do one really intense. That's the one that made it in the movie because it was so good. And he can just go. If you're ever looking for an actor who can just keep going, improvise, do whatever he wants, like that's Joshua Winter. He's very, very, very good at his job. And I think just added a lot of much needed energy to the movie.
Now, from a look and feel off the aesthetic, what was your conversations like with Yaron Levy for as your cinematographer? What were you referencing in terms of that, in terms of how the film was going to look?
For me, I talked a lot about. It's interesting because he was on another movie. He was on another movie for about half of my prep. I don't know if he wants people to know that. So we did a lot of like conversations via Zoom, and then by the time he got there, we got together and were able to talk. But I'd already found a lot of the locations by that point, and kind of had a sense of it. But the idea was we wanted it to look like a bright poppy movie, right? It should look like these country music stars. It should almost be CW. Like you don't have CW.
I know what it is. We know what it is.
Okay, great. Like it should be like almost like a teen pop movie at first. You think that's what you're getting into, but then as it goes, the film gets darker, things get weirder, the angles get stranger. And then I think a lot about like who is in the frame and why we are framing in a certain way, and the power imbalance between these people. But at the beginning, you see a lot of two shots of just the two of Lee and Jordan together. But then as the movie progresses, they're now in separate frames. They're now on opposite ends of the frames. They're now shot in different ways. And we also talked a lot about power imbalances and the way the camera can, like, if you're looking down versus looking up, and what that means for these moments of power. Because this is a lot of women getting pitted against each other, and there's going to be different power imbalances. So those were the conversations we were having, is the way we can show that in the frame. And also, the movie is a slow burn, and not a lot of horror happens for a while. So it was a lot of finding ways to show people that things are off, things are not going well, with it still being a beautiful movie. So there's a lot of things that, like, shooting these women from certain angles, shooting Harper. We also talked a lot about shooting Harper as this, shooting her with a lot of power, giving her a lot of like, you want to see her and go, oh, that's a star, and so finding ways to shoot her that were super flattering. But also,
first shot when she comes down the stairway, and it's like she's just staring down at these two young women.
Yes, which is such a power move, right? Just stand at the top and just stare until they speak to you. I mean, so it's both like, in the choreography of the scene, but also just in the way we shot it, which Ron totally understood. Ron is a brilliant cinematographer and has just worked for a really long time on a lot of stuff. And so it was really fun to talk about what all this stuff meant. I really get into that.
I'd not thought about it until you started saying it, like, in the way that, you're right. It all feels like very open, and you're getting us to show exactly what's happening. And then as it moves on, the points of view seem to be obscured. It's like we're not always sure who's looking and why we're looking, but it's making us lean into where it's going to take us.
Good.
Absolutely.
That's the goal.
So obviously a script is written and a film is produced, and then it gets edited. So when you were in the edit with, is it Hunter Envire? Is that how I say it?
Hunter.
Yeah. When you're in the edit, what did you discover about the story that wasn't evident when you were at the script stage? What did it reveal to you?
I mean, you always are remaking the movie in post, for sure. So what was weird is we shot this in 2021, and I was in the edit bay in 2021, the end of 2021, and COVID was pretty bad. So Blumhouse would not let us be in the room together. So we edited it. We did all via an online program called Evercast. So that was weird. I've never met Hunter in real life, but he's my best friend. So because I feel like editing is also, he's not really my best friend, but I feel like he had to hear all of my, you go through the drama of the shoot with your editor, and they become your therapist and your best friend, but also your editor. I mean, the thing that we really found, I think, and this is my own, I always am putting more than we actually need. I think I'm always like, well, I think we need to add another line about this thing here and stuff. And we ended up relying a lot on, it's a very dialogue heavy movie. We ended up actually cutting a lot of dialogue out because I will end up adding stuff on the day, being like, maybe you should say this. Maybe we should try this. And Hunter's was really good at going like, we get it. Like, we get it. The plot of the movie is very simple. You don't have to have so many explanations, which I think is just me covering my ass still as a pretty early in my career director. So we found a lot of that. And then we ended up cutting, there was more in the bar. There was a lot more that happened in the openings moments. And we were like, you don't need it. We don't need it. We get it. We get who these people are. We get the setup. We get the relationship between Abby and Shiloh Fernandez's character. So we understand what's going on here. So it was a lot of that kind of stuff is figuring out what you don't need, that you've spent hours shooting, which is always depressing. Days cut.
Now, one last fun question then. So for those listening that haven't seen the film, and I don't think we've not really been very spoilery, so we don't have to go too mad, but what would you be looking forward for them to see in Torn Hearts? What's a scene or a sequence that you particularly sort of, I mean, obviously you're proud of the film. This isn't to sort of make to talk the film down, but what particular scene or sequence is like a moment or two where you really, really got what you wanted, that you'd be excited for them to see?
One thing I really wanted, it's a bit of a spoiler, but there is a fight sequence that I really enjoyed shooting, and it was something I feel like I got to sink my teeth into. I like shooting action stuff. It's really fun for me. And getting to shoot, I had this, I won't say who's fighting, but I had this, I think, look, women's physicality is different than men. And I think a lot of times when we're watching movies, people are too coordinated. They're too choreographed for for their fight sequences. So I talked a lot with my stunt coordinator about that these are two women who've never fought each other before. I've probably never been in a brawl before, never been in a fight, but I wanted to show how vicious it could be between them while still being very messy. And so we had a lot of fun choreographing that and then putting some fun music over it. And I had a good time making that scene.
Well, look, I remind people then, Torn Hearts is available on HD digital in the UK, easy enough, all the platforms that you like. It just gives me to say thank you very much for giving your time on Britflicks Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Tired of long waits and rushed care at the ER and urgent care clinic? Next time, stay home and let Dispatch Health bring the power of the hospital to you.
I call Dispatch Health. A care team of medical professionals actually come to your house.
They're the same caliber of people that you would see if you were at a hospital or an urgent care.
Dispatch Health can treat most non-life-threatening emergencies.
They can do the x-rays, they can do stitches,
urinary tract infections, blood test, urinalysis, ultrasound.
It's almost everything that they can do at the ER.
You never feel rushed. They're there for you and only you.
I felt like their only patient.
And it costs no more than a trip to urgent care because Dispatch Health is covered by most insurance, including Medicare. See if we serve your home at dispatchhealth.com.
Dispatch Health really went above and beyond.
It's wonderful to have care come to your home.
House calls are back, and they're better than ever. Learn more at dispatchhealth.com.
Your plans? Today it's dinner with the parents at your spot.
We gotta come back here.
Now, their spot. Or you're on the edge of your seat at the game.
Come on, just one time.
And it's the one. Or maybe you're catching the next flight to...
Now boarding flight 1850.
Oh, that's you. The choice is yours. And when you're with Amex, it's not if it's going to happen, but when. American Express. Don't live life without it.